Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to welcome you for coming today to our presentation of Lower Your Stress and Boost Your Energy with 1 thing to lose and 3 things to use. And we're going to get to that and solve the mystery in a few minutes. But first, some of us or some of you may know 1 or 2 of both of us, but you may not know the 2 of us. So we're just going to give you a little brief introduction of who we are. I'm Marty Sloditski. I'm an integrative health coach. I'm also a HeartMath certified coach. I'm not sure how many of you know about HeartMath. And my focus in my practice, Master Your Stress, is helping women with their stress. I think as women, we have so much stress and the daily stress that we deal with. And we tend to ignore it and don't realize how much it's affecting us mentally and physically. So I help women to drill down to find out what the stressors are and how they could change their response to it so that they can improve and enhance their well-being and their health. I've been working with Pooja for a little over a year on a collaboration that we're doing called Healthy Active Aging. And we have developed these programs for people 40, 50, and beyond so that they can get to that beyond and live a healthy, active, quality life. So I'm going to turn it over to Pooja to introduce herself and tell you a little bit more about Healthy Active Aging.
Thank you, Marty. As Marty said, Marty and I have been collaborating for a year on these programs. My journey started over 10 years ago. I've been teaching wellness classes for the last 10 years. I started out with a career as a scientist in research and technology, and I made a switch to health and wellness following challenges with my own health and that of my husband and children. Once we started getting the family healthy, I realized it was time for me to take all my learning and convert them into classes. I also do one-on-one consulting for nutritional therapy, but I really enjoy teaching these classes and bringing them to the community. We teach on a variety of topics, and today we're going to bring you a presentation on stress and energy. So to Marty.
Okay, thanks, Pooja. And before we get started, of course, we have to give this disclaimer to let you know that what we're presenting tonight is strictly for educational purposes and should not be construed as medical advice. If you do make any dietary or lifestyle changes, please keep your healthcare provider or practitioner in the loop, because these can really have a very powerful impact on your health and may even interfere with certain medications that you're taking. So we do want to let you know that. And a couple of housekeeping items. All attendees are going to be muted if you are not already, and I will take care of that right now. And then you'll have the opportunity to, oh, actually, I cannot do that right now. Yes, I can. Okay. And 1 second. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you are all muted, and we will unmute you at the end of the session when we will open up the Q&A. And if you want to ask questions during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'm sure everyone knows where the chat is, but if you can't find it, you can hover your cursor over either the bottom or top and look for that talk bubble that and the chat and just click on that. This way, if you have a question and you don't want to forget it, just put it in the chat. Okay. So with that said, has your get up and go got up and gone? Do you drag yourself out of bed every day? Do you need a caffeine lift in the afternoon? And do you still have the energy to do all the things that you love? Well, Pooja is going to explain more about what energy is and what we can do nutritionally to boost it. So I'm going to stop my share and turn it over to Pooja.
Oops, I don't know why it's doing that. No, I don't want to cancel. Oh, sorry. Okay, so if you notice in our title, all of the words in the title have to do with movement, right? Get up, go, gone. That is because when we think of energy, often we think of movement, right? Objects in motion, like this kid over here is probably bouncing off the walls and he probably has a ton of energy. And when we're feeling lethargic and we just want to lie down and we don't feel like doing anything, the truth is, even in those moments, we are expending tremendous amounts of energy. Energy is something that we're always using, even while we're sleeping, just to keep us alive, just to keep your heart beating, your lungs moving, your digestion moving. Every single cell in your body is using energy all the time. So it would behoove us to not be running on an energy deficit. And so one thing that I want to, in my screen will not advance, I am so sorry. Here we go. So where does energy come from? If I were to ask you where energy comes from, well, the two main ways that we make energy is through fuel, which is the food that we eat, and by breathing. It's the respiration, it's the breathing that actually converts that fuel into energy. And you may have heard of ATP, that's the energy currency of your cell. That's when energy is made, that is the molecule that's carrying that energy. That will then be converted to the calories that we're expending. So it's really, really important. Two things, we eat and we breathe. That's how we make energy. So that begs the question, then what zaps your energy? Because I told you earlier, we don't want to be running in deficit. And if you get a paycheck, you put it in the bank, and then you budget, right? You make a budget for the month and you know where your dollars are going, and then you know how much you have left to spend on yourself. Well, we need to do something like that with our energy and be mindful and take stock of where we could be losing. And Marty is going to talk in a little bit more detail about how we lose energy, but these are some of the broad categories of things that will just drain our inner battery. Certain foods are going to do that. We don't realize that, but I'll talk about one today. Too much exercise or too little exercise. If we have any chronic infections or health conditions, even our medications could be zapping our energy. Some meds make us very tired. Too little sleep could be another reason why we're running on energy deficit. Overextending ourselves in this day and age, we put a lot of expectations on ourselves and not being able to say no. And then the most favorite topic that Marty and I teach about is stress, because stress and chronic stress we'll talk about is the fastest way to lose all that energy. So that begs the question, what is stress? If you look at the dictionary definition of stress, then we can see that it's a physical, chemical, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tension. And Bruce Cryer, he defines it as a misalignment between expectations and reality. But really, stress is anything that knocks us off balance. And then it takes a tremendous amount of energy to get back to balance, to get back to that center where we feel grounded. So what are the types of stress that we face? Well, our ancestors, the type of stress that they faced was mainly acute. So whether they were starving and they needed to find food, or they were being chased by a predator, their body, their mechanisms physiologically were very well developed to handle acute stress. And 99% of our genes we still share with our ancestors. So we have very good systems in place to deal with acute stress. The problem of modern life is the chronic stress, where we are perpetually stressed and we are calling in these our adrenal glands, and I'll talk about that. We're calling on them all the time to help us deal with the stress. And the other thing about stress that we have to remember, that our bodies do not know the difference between when that stress is real or if it's just a perception. It's just our perception. So, and what I mean by that, right now where you're sitting, if you can think of a person or a situation that has caused you stress in the past, it's no longer there, but it has caused you stress in the past. And just observe what your body does the minute you think about that. And for many of us, the stress response will kick in even when the stressor is absent, just by thinking about it. And that stress response actually is there to help you deal with that predator. Remember that guy who was running from the bear? So it's your fight and flight response. And what it does, it raises your heart rate and your blood pressure, because now your heart wants to pump blood so you can supply your muscles with oxygen, because it thinks that you have to run. You know, there's a predator, something is chasing you, you need to run. So your body will prepare accordingly, right? And then it also can create anxiety and irritability, and also can create fatigue because you're constantly you're using up that energy. Sometimes you're not using it in running, but you're mentally, it will create fatigue. Then it affects your neurotransmitters, right? Think depression and anxiety. Lowers your immune system because you cannot be in growth and survival mode at the same time. So the immune system is not a priority when when the body's trying to save your life and you're being chased by something, and that's what it thinks is happening. So the immune system will shut down. And then we also start depleting some key nutrients. We especially deplete B vitamins and magnesium, and both of those are very important when converting food to energy. So without those nutrients, even you could be eating all the calories and still never get the energy from that food. So it's really, really important for us to get a handle on this stress response. The first person to study this, it was in the 1930s, and his name is Hans Selye. And you may have heard of the general adaptation syndrome. If you like mice, I am so sorry for what I'm about to share. I do not like mice, but they taught us something very important. What Hans Selye did, he subjected different mice to different stressors. Now, some of the mice, he just deprived them of food. And some of the mice, he exposed them to hot and cold temperatures. There was a whole group of mice that he put on a stepper, and he had the experiment set up in such a way that the poor mice never got a break. It was like going on a treadmill and never stopping. And that's what these rats were doing. They were exercising without stopping. And the end result for each of them was the same. All of the mice died. So what he said in his paper was, as long as the stressor prevailed without a break, the rat died. It didn't matter what it was. And it doesn't even matter if it's there or if it's in your head. So this is, fortunately, we're not mice, we're humans. So, you know, if those mice died within a few weeks, it would take us a few years for our bodies to break down. So this is why it's so important to recognize how it feels in your body, how stress feels in your body. It's important to recognize, you know, what you can do about it so you can take those breaks. And Marty's going to give you some really good tools where she will show you how you could take those breaks even when you don't get a chance to take a real break from that stressor. And what happened, why they died, is because their adrenal glands gave up. The rats went through that whole process, and then they developed adrenal fatigue. And in their case, it actually just blew out because he did not give them a single break. The reason we don't blow out our adrenal glands, which are the two glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and they are responsible for doing a lot of things, but they make the hormone cortisol, and cortisol is your stress hormone. You need cortisol if you want to survive the stressors. And in acute stress, cortisol is produced and it creates all those symptoms. But then when the stressor is gone, cortisol goes away. It goes down. But when the stressor is constantly there and your adrenal glands are constantly having to pump cortisol, there comes a time when they can't do that anymore. And and this is where you will feel like you're dragging yourself. So we're talking about stress and energy, right? They're linked because chronic stress will deplete energy chronically. So you will need tremendous amounts of energy now to do the same activities that you could do easily before. And once this stage of adrenal fatigue hits, people experience burnout, and they find this is an extreme case. And I've actually suffered from it in 2006, so I can tell you this is no joke. And unless we do something to reverse it or to take care of it, this is a situation which can ultimately lead to chronic illness like cancer and autoimmune. And then eventually, if there's nothing that can be done to mitigate it, then eventually it's death. So we want to be very careful, and we just want to make sure that we are taking those breaks. And I'll talk about that in a second. So why are we talking about sugar? So one of the things we promised you in this presentation is I'm going to talk about one thing you want to lose to increase your energy. And Marty's going to give you 3 things that you can use. The reason I'm talking about sugar is because sugar creates in your body the same response as if there is a stressor. Sugar is very, very addictive. I'm not talking about having a sugary treat once in a while. That is not the problem. The problem is when we get into a sugar roller coaster. And it's very easy to do here in the US because everything, especially the packaged food, is loaded with sugar. So first, I just want to show you, I don't know if you can see this. This is just 5 teaspoons of sugar. And this is what the American Heart Association recommends for women. Just 5 teaspoons of sugar. But if you look at the can of Coke or even just an 8-ounce glass of juice, that easily has at least 10 teaspoons. So just by drinking just 1 glass of juice or a can of Coke in a day, we have already exceeded our sugar limit by double, right? So why is this important? This is important because the body is not handled to process so much sugar. Remember those adrenal glands that I was talking about? Well, this is the roller coaster that we will then experience. If you look at the blood sugar response in your bodies, let's suppose that we start our day with a donut, a glass of orange juice, and a little bit of yogurt. We might think that the yogurt and the orange juice are healthy, but if you read the labels and if you've already exceeded your sugar content for the day, what's going to happen is that your adrenal glands are first, the insulin will kick in because that much sugar is toxic. So your body wants to restore balance or homeostasis. So insulin will first come in and do a big sweep and try to get rid of all that sugar. And what happens is so much insulin is produced because of that much amount of sugar that many a times it overcompensates. So instead of bringing you back to normal, the pendulum swings the other way and your blood sugar actually dips. So this is why 30 minutes later or an hour later, you may feel cranky, irritated, and hungry again. And that at this time, your adrenal glands are sensing that there is stress. So sugar now creates the same response in your body as if there is chronic stress or acute stress to start with, actually. And then your adrenal glands come in, cortisol goes up, tries to create more sugar from glycogen because it thinks you need energy to run from that bear, or that fight or flight response kicks in. Once that happens and we're feeling the effects of it, we actually go and grab another snack because by the time we're waiting for our blood sugars to rise normally, we're getting cranky and hungry. And so by doing this, what we are tempted to grab is another snack, which is high in carbohydrates or sugar. And then the whole roller coaster just keeps repeating. And by the end of the day, you have taxed your adrenals without even being stressed. So this is how sugar actually can deplete your energy because it's calling on those adrenal glands and you're experiencing chronic stress. Sugar can also deplete your energy by creating dehydration. And nutritional deficiencies, remember we talked about the B vitamins and the magnesium? You need both of those to burn your food into energy. And sugar will actually deplete those from your body. And sugar can also cause inflammation. So your immune system is on high alert. And when your immune system is on high alert, that's also perceived as a threat. So that's also a stress on the body. So all of these things will ultimately lead to feeling very, very tired and fatigued, and your energy is deprived. So one of the things at this point, I think is very important to remember that it's very, very easy to overdo sugar. And again, I'm not demonizing sugar. With the holidays coming, I know we're going to all want some sweet treats. I'm talking about depending on sugar for it's like that's your source of energy, then that's what will put your body in a state of chronic stress. It's how you start your day, sets the tone for the rest of the day. And if you're eating anything out of a packet, it's really important to avoid it if sugar is in the top 3 ingredients, because what you're trying to avoid is that sugar roller coaster. Artificial sweeteners, except for stevia, some of these will also give you that sweet taste can also trigger that insulin and that sugar crash. So it's important also to avoid those. And if you are not sure, sugar is not just listed as sugar on the ingredients list of all these foods. They come under all different names. And at the end of the presentation, Marty has a link that you can download a list of names that sugar hides under. But anything that ends in OSE has probably got sugar in it. Rice syrup, barley, malt, dextrin, corn syrup solids. All of these have lots and lots of sugar, so we really want to avoid these products. And then reading the labels on condiments and salad dressings, because like I said, it's very, very easy to overdo sugar. So some of the tips that I have that I hope will help you. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about, to maintain a very consistent energy throughout the day, it's very important to regulate the portion of carbohydrate that you're eating. Different people are different. So generally we say that 40% of your calories should come from carbs and 30% from proteins and 30% from fat. But the way that I like to think of this, it just makes it easy for me, is if you look at your fist, so that's the portion of carb that I might, so in my case, it's rice. Or if it's bread, just a small piece of bread. If you're looking at your palm, so that's like a deck of cards, that could be your portion for protein. And then the tip of your thumb, that's just how much fat. So that's for every meal. That's for each meal. Balancing carb, fat, and protein at each meal is very important. Different bodies are different. So what that means is this rule of thumb may not work for everybody. So what I suggest that you do is, if you could take just one day to pay attention to your body, you write down everything that you eat for breakfast and write down an hour later, how do you feel? Are you hangry? Are you tired? Are you irritable? Are you feeling depressed? Did you experience that buzz, that high and a low? So once you start tracking that, even if you do it for 3 or 4 meals, you'll start getting an idea of what foods are triggering that response for you. And this is the best way that I can think of, for you to do your own little detective work and figure out those portions. And cravings, sugar cravings, if you've been depending on sugar, or if sugar is part of every meal, then it's been very hard to control that craving, because it works in the same centers as cocaine does, and it's very addictive. So one of the things that I've suggested and I found success with is, sometimes our thirst signal gets confused with the sweet tooth. So drinking lots of water when you think you want to go for that sugary snack, that can help. If that doesn't help and you're still thinking about that sugary snack, then you can take, if you're not allergic to nuts, you could take some nuts and sprinkle some sea salt on it, and then let that taste really, really roll on your tongue. Like, taste it as much as you can. Taste that little bit of the salt. You don't want a whole lot of salt, because again, it's just a little bit. You just sprinkle a little sea salt, taste it really well, and see if that doesn't cut the craving. And if that doesn't work, because it depends again on how dependent we are on sugar, I just go ahead and fulfill that craving. So what I do is I take like a date or two and like half a banana, and I dip it in some organic peanut butter, and I make myself that snack. At least there's fiber in there, so the sugar won't be released as fast. So there are some things that you and I can do to break and interrupt that whole cycle. Because remember, it's when we don't get a break, that's when the adrenal glands are in danger of giving up. So we want to make sure that we interrupt that cycle and try to get a handle on sugar. And the night fast that I'm talking about here is not intermittent fasting, although some people do that for health reasons. The night fast that I'm talking about, if you don't have diabetes, and if you're not someone that has hypoglycemia, if you haven't been diagnosed with those two things, then night fast is something you could do safely, where you just stop eating around, say, 6 or 7 o'clock, and then don't eat a snack before bed. And then the next morning, don't eat breakfast till 6 or 7. So giving your body that 12-hour break can also help improve some of your insulin sensitivity. So basically, for my part of the presentation, I'm encouraging you to lose sugar, to reduce it as much as you can, because it really is a thief. It's like someone just breaks into the bank where all your money is and steals it, then you're not going to have any. And sugar also, being dependent on sugar, to me, another analogy that I use, it's like having all your apps running on your phone, and all of a sudden your phone is out of battery. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Marty so she can give you 3 things that you can use to boost your energy.
Thanks, Pooja. Okay, so Pooja did share with you the one thing that you should lose so that you could boost your energy and reduce your stress. And now I'm going to talk about 3 things that you could use. And you'll be happy to know that you already have these 3 things. You don't have to go out and buy them. You don't have to order them from Amazon. We all have these 3 things. And the first one is your mind. The second one is your breath. And the third one is really most relevant to what I'm going to be talking about today. But that one is your heart. So I'm sure we could all agree that we have these 3 things, right? Okay, so what I would like to start with, as I mentioned, I am a heart math certified coach, and this is a heart math technique. It's called the heart focused breathing technique. And it's beyond the scope of today's presentation to really explain what heart math is, but I would be happy to do that at another point in time. But what I would like to do is invite you to do this technique with me as I guide you through it. So right now I invite you to close your eyes so that you could block out any distractions that you may have around you, and start to focus attention on your heart. And to help you do that, you can place your hand on your heart if you want. It's not necessary, but it could help you to maintain that focus on your heart. And then just start to breathe a little slower and a little deeper than your usual breath. So let's try that. And just try a nice, even, comfortable pace. Okay, you don't have to force it. And as you're doing this, imagine that your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area. And let's continue this for a few more breaths. And at the end of your next exhale, or when you feel comfortable, you can slowly open your eyes and bring your attention back to your screen. That breathing technique is meant to turn down the volume on stress. It doesn't really address the root cause, but it will help you if you're in a stressful situation, maybe stuck in traffic or just facing a stressful situation or event or something that you know that's coming up. You could quickly use this to turn down the volume of that stress. So Pooja mentioned the types of stress, and she talked about acute and low-level stress. I'm sure we can all recognize the acute stressors. These are things that don't happen to us all the time. They're really major life events, and they could be things like divorce or separation, the loss of a loved one. It could be loss of a job or a critical illness. Either yourself or someone that you love has a critical illness. There are also happy occasions that can cause acute stress, and these could be things like getting married or the birth of a baby. We generally consider these to be happy occasions, but they can cause a lot of stress. I'm not going to be talking about those tonight. What I am going to be talking about is low-level stress. And it's low-level chronic stress. And Pooja alluded to this also, the word chronic. So what is low-level chronic stress? Well, first of all, it's ongoing. It doesn't stop. It's chronic. It accumulates over time. And the most dangerous thing is that we accept it as normal. We think of our daily hassles as just things that happen to everybody, and it's no big deal. But it is a big deal. And as Deepak Chopra said, adapting to stress is like adapting to a rock in your shoe because you can't take it out. So think about what happens if you're walking with a rock in your shoe. Could be even the tiniest little pebble. And you don't really feel it at first. It's not that bad. But the more you walk on it, the more it rubs against your foot and it abrades your skin, and it could turn into bruising or blisters or bleeding, or worst case scenario, it turns into an infection if you have it there long enough. Well, this is kind of like what low-level chronic stress does to us and does to our health. So how it affects us? Well, first of all, we're talking about energy tonight. And it depletes our energy. Because it accumulates and because it's ongoing, it could actually deplete our energy more or greater than the acute stressors that come as a major life event, but then go away. And it contributes to aging and disease. Even things like high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, and even cancer. So one way we could think of energy is like water in a bucket, and our energy is the water. Now, if we have holes in our bucket, we're losing our energy. And it would help us, first of all, to find those holes. We want to plug them up, but we can't plug them up if we don't know where they are. And it would help us to try to plug the biggest ones up first, and then address the smaller ones. So what are some of your energy drains? Just think about it for a minute. What drains your energy? I'm going to give you some examples and we'll see if you could relate to these. Deadlines and overload, having too much to do, having to meet that deadline. Technology glitches. When you do something on your computer and it worked yesterday and today you do the same exact thing and it doesn't work. It's either a glitch, operator error, or it could just be that something went haywire. Traffic, I don't really need to say anything about that. I'm sure we all have been stuck in traffic jams. Health challenges. It could be something as minor as a cold. And as Pooja said before, we are stressed or experience stress when we are not in balance, when our bodies are not in homeostasis. And we've had the biggest health challenge for the past 2.5, almost 3 years, facing COVID. So these are all things that drain our energy. Unexpected change. Even if you expect change, there's so many people that don't like change, but when something is unexpected, that can drain your energy even more. Decisions, making decisions could even be the smallest decision, but it does drain your energy. Have you ever tried to make a decision and after a few hours, you just can't even think anymore? Finances, don't have to say anything about that one. Time pressures kind of goes along with deadlines and overload. Sleep disruption, anytime your sleep is disrupted, even to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, it breaks your whole regenerative process and it drains your energy. You don't get a good night's sleep, so you don't wake up refreshed. Inefficient processes. We used to joke about going to the DMV because no matter what line you got in, it was always the wrong one. But I'm sure you could understand the frustration of being in a place or trying to do something where the process is inefficient. Workplace or family drama. Don't need to say too much about that. We all have drama queens and kings in our lives, I'm sure. Work-life balance. And difficult people, and that could go along with the family drama, but we encounter people we don't know who could be difficult, and we don't realize it, but they do drain our energy. So in order to boost our energy, we need to become resilient to stress. And what exactly does that mean? What does it mean to be resilient? Well, it's the ability to prepare for stress, to respond to it in the moment, and to recover from a stressful event. Or in other words, we're able to bounce back. And how we become resilient depends a lot on our emotions. We have an emotional landscape. And we could gauge our emotional landscape. We experience so many emotions during the day. It could be hour to hour, moment to moment, but we don't really stop and take stock of them. We just think of them as normal and we just go on to the next emotion. But let's pause right now and just become aware. You may be feeling, or I'm sure you are feeling an emotion right now, and it could be anything from curiosity to calmness to impatience because you want me to get on with this. But I hope you're feeling curiosity and I hope that you feel calm. But you are feeling an emotion. What emotion were you feeling when you were trying to log on to the Zoom meeting? So we are feeling emotions all the time. And as I said, our emotions can either drain or boost our energy. So let's talk about the energy draining emotions first, emotions. And think about what are some of your draining emotions before I give you the examples. What are they? What do they look like? Where do you feel them in your body? They may even have a color or a certain sound. So just think about that, and I'll give you some examples. Anger, frustration, impatience, worry, anxiety, resentment, and boredom. So how did you feel? Just as I was saying those words, sometimes they could drain your energy just thinking about them, as Pooja was talking about perception. There's nothing here, hopefully, really to make you angry. But thinking about anger or frustration could start to drain your energy. So I won't leave you on that point, because let's talk about some energy boosting emotions. Think of some emotions that will actually boost your energy, that will make you feel good, positive emotions. And again, what do they look like? Where do you feel them in your body? And do they have a color, or do they have a particular sound? So here are some examples, and maybe you've thought of these: appreciation, care, love, gratitude, compassion, joy, and fulfillment. All of these are examples of energy boosting emotions. And some of these are subjective. In talking with people, sometimes care can seem like an energy draining emotion if you're caring for someone, but you have that resentment in there. So this is caring, where you're freely giving of your care. Now, when you use your emotions to boost your energy, you can actually build your resilience to stress and shift into a state of coherence. So what is coherence? Well, the opposite of coherence is incoherence, which is kind of a jumbled, ununderstandable mess. But coherence is an optimal state of functioning, and it is key to building your resilience capacity, your resilience to stress. And it aligns your heart and your mind and your emotions. So this is really important, because the goal is to build up resilience to stress and shift into that state of coherence. And when you are in a state of coherence, you can get quality sleep, you feel refreshed, you have mental clarity and focus, you have improved decision making, you become more resilient to stress, and you feel mentally, emotionally, and physically well. And the more coherence that we can build and maintain, the more energy we have in our systems, and we can create a new baseline of resilience. So how can we shift into this state of coherence? Well, I'd like to guide you through another heart math technique called the quick coherence breathing technique. And the first 3 steps are the same as the heart focus breathing technique. And then we're going to add that positive feeling. So let's start out. I invite you to close your eyes to block out distractions. And start placing attention on your heart. And again, you could place your hand there if that feels comfortable to you. And start breathing a little slower and a little deeper than your usual breath. And imagine that your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area. And now activate a positive feeling. It could be something that makes you feel good. a joyous feeling, and whatever that happens to be for you. And as you're activating it, really try to immerse yourself in that feeling. And let's take a few more breaths like this. And at the end of your next exhale, just slowly bring your focus back. So I hope that technique helped you to bring a little more coherence into your life. And these two techniques, the heart focused breathing and also the quick coherence technique, you could use anytime to prepare for a stressful situation when you're right in the middle of a stressful situation, if you're in a traffic jam. And it could also help you recover from a stressful situation. And these are things you could do right now using three things that you already have: your mind, your breath, and your heart. So I hope that the tips and the information and the techniques that Pooja and I shared with you tonight will help you to have more energy and to have enough energy to do all the things that you want to do and all the things that you love. Here's our contact information, and you will be getting this in the video. And Pooja and I have a Healthy Active Aging monthly newsletter. It only goes out once a month, so we won't overload your email box with a lot of mail from us. And there is a QR code here and also a link if you'd like to sign up to receive it. And if you do sign up for our mailing list, you will receive the free download of How Sugar Disguises Itself. And this is what Pooja was talking about before when she was talking about sugar. Sugar has many names, and this is a cheat sheet that you could bring to the grocery store with you, or you could just go through your pantry and your refrigerator and find out how many products you have that sugar is lurking in. So thank you for your attention, and I am going to unmute people and see if anyone has any questions or comments.
I'm signing up for the newsletter. I don't know if I'm already on it, Pooja. I might be.
You are, Robin.
Am I already on it? Okay.
Yes.
I was busy signing up for the newsletter. It was very good.
But you can
Thank
still
you so
download.
much.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just enjoyed the interplay between the physical and the emotional. I love that because it takes.
Oh, good. We try to be holistic.
Yeah.
We did take like four sessions and condensed it into one. So I apologize if I had to rush through some of my slides. That's why this is a great time to ask questions. And when you're going back and reviewing it, if you have questions, just reach out.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. So does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Pooja, you were talking about sugar and consumption of sugar. Does it matter at all if you consume it? You were mentioning how if you have a sweet treat, you like to have fiber with it and all that. Does it? I've read before that fat or protein or fiber you have with something that's got sugar does change how it's metabolized.
That's true. And that's where things like the glycemic index come into play. So that's very true. So when sugar is a problem is when we're consuming it straight, right? Like in sugary drink, there's no fiber, there's nothing to buffer that sugar. So your blood sugar will spike fast. So if it's connected to fiber, like in fruits, for example, so it doesn't metabolize differently, but it does take longer. It takes longer, for your blood sugars to spike. So you're not going to get that same instant response, the one that I was showing you, the roller coaster. That comes from processed sugar and just when there's nothing else to buffer it. So that's correct. And some fruits even can do that, even though they have fiber. So that's why, if you're sensitive to blood sugars, we encourage you to check the glycemic load of foods. But if you're healthy and you're not worried about diabetes, then fruits are a great way to get that sugar in.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Is anybody else?
This is a very timely presentation because I had a terrible night's sleep last night. I'm actually exhausted.
Oh, thank you, Jen, and thank you for coming. Yeah.
No, absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Sleep is so important. And Pooja was talking about cortisol. And if we have stress during our day, if we don't build up our resilience to stress and we have stress, we actually go to bed with more cortisol in our systems than we should have because it builds up during the day instead of depleting itself naturally. So it affects our quality of sleep. And then instead of regenerating, getting that regenerative healing sleep, we wake up in the morning with a higher level of cortisol. So now we're starting out the day with a higher level, and then it increases during the day if we don't do anything to reduce our stress. So it really is a cycle, and it's very hard to break.
Yep.
I'd like to learn more about that cortisol and burnout. And Pooja, you said I think I went through burnout a little bit, although I know the signs, so I sort of started healing myself quicker than letting it go all the way to adrenal fatigue.
Yeah.
But at some point you're saying if you're pumping, too much cortisol, your adrenals just suddenly can't handle anymore and they just quit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there for a while, you need cortisol to deal with the stressor, but your body's not making enough. And that's when you feel like you have this 100-pound weight that you're dragging and you can't move.
Okay.
That's a sign that you're not making enough cortisol.
Yeah, it's interesting how cortisol, people constantly think, well, it's bad to have too much cortisol, but then you do need some.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I could tell I was going into burnout is I just suddenly I didn't, you don't have these ups and down emotions, but I was like flat.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't be happy. I can't be sad. I just, here.
Yeah, cortisol is the thing that gets
feeling.
you moving. It's an activator, but you can't be active all the time. You'll burn out your motor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm way better now.
Same. Yes.
But I think being important that you're educating people on the signs of this.
Yes.
Catch it earlier.
Because we are very hard on ourselves. And I think as a culture and society, I just have noticed that we're just putting more and more expectations on us and expecting us to perform all the time at that same level, which is the fastest way to get into that adrenal fatigue.
Absolutely.
I don't know how many people saw the news, but just this week or late last week, they were saying that they're now recommending that doctors test for anxiety that everyone, I think they even included children in this, which they probably should. But yeah, all adults should be tested for anxiety, that should be a routine test. And I think
Yeah.
the past 3 years that we've gone through in the roller coaster ride, it has increased people's anxiety level through the roof.
Also,
Well, yeah, well, I was thinking healthcare workers,
yeah,
Yes,
because it never ended.
never ending,
It's
right?
when that stress just doesn't ever end.
then when we're anxious, I know I would tend to grab sugary snacks.
Yeah.
And then that just compounds the problem, because that creates anxiety inside the body, so this is just kind of like adding to it.
Well, this is a funny story. If we're going to talk about the pandemic, so many people were very anxious the first year of the pandemic that they ate a lot. And I was off all sugar that first whole year. And I didn't have anxiety. I felt better than I have, really great. But then when things started opening up, then I started doing more and more and trying to, doing too much. And that's when I was out, and I would stop by and I would get like a slice of cake from the grocery store or something,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, I deserve it. I've been
Yeah.
running like crazy, so I deserve this slice of cake. And then it just made me feel worse.
That's the thing, Robin. It's first we're dependent on it, then you get off of it. And I'm never against allowing yourself an occasional treat, but once you get off of it and you eat it, it doesn't feel the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is
Marty
so
knows.
true.
I'll
I
grab
think
a little
reasons for
brownie or
eating
a
it,
fudge.
celebrating is fine.
Yeah.
But because you feel like you need it as a comfort food.
Yeah.
Mm,
It's the constant dependence on it that is an issue.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
It's not-
usually when we're tired.
yeah.
I know myself, when I'm tired at night before I go to bed, I always have the cravings,
Yeah.
and it just makes things worse rather than better.
Yes. Which, I always feel like breakfast and dinner, if we can really mindfully balance carbs, fats, and proteins to sustain us better.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ladies, thank
And
you very
especially
much.
right
I'm
before
gonna
bed.
hop off.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for
Bye.
joining us.
Take care.
Thanks,
Well,
everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
I mean, I think especially eating the sugar right before bed.
Mm-hmm.
My husband has a bad habit of getting cookies out right before bed.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, we get tired, but we're pushing ourselves to stay up.
Yeah.
When we should just go to bed.
Yeah.
But I'm guilty. You have to understand that mindset, and then, and it's the same thing when we're tired during the day. We keep on pushing ourselves.
Yeah, the
You just
afternoon, that 3 p.m. What would you suggest, Marty, at say 3 o'clock hour? I've tried.
I would suggest doing one of the techniques.
Yeah.
Doing one of the heart math techniques, because it moves you from cortisol when you activate those positive emotions to DHEA.
Mhm.
And it will boost your energy.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of different things you could do. You can go take a walk. You could do a meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I really find that the heart math techniques help me greatly.
Yeah. I always tell people, Marty, that your techniques, I use them in the moment. Sometimes I have to, because that's the only way I can catch my breath, take a break from that stress.
Yes. Yeah. That's so true.
That's good.
Yeah. This has been so good. Thank you.
So you guys have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thanks, Robin.
Bye. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Gail.